Hi, my name is Sarah Gottlieb, and you are listening to The Sound of Color.
I actually tend to think of color as the love child between light and material.
In this podcast, you will meet designers, artists, and creatives, and you will hear their personal story about their work and their passion for color.
The average human eye can detect about 10 million different gradations of color, which is better than some animals, better than dogs, but not as good as prawns.
I work as a designer and I just love colors. Color is almost like a physical thing for me. When I see a color that I like, I just feel like licking it, touching it, or just smearing it all over myself. Well, when I feel like that, I know that this is a color I need to use in my work.
Everyone's got a story about color, and it just makes it an incredibly enjoyable subject to work with.
As you can hear, today's episode of The Sound of Color is special because it's in English for the very first time. And that is because I have a brand new sponsor.
So I made a podcast in Danish about colors. And I thought, why make a podcast about a, to some extent, niche subject in a niche language? So I asked Montana, can we please do a podcast together in English so more people can get to know all the great people that work with color and why they work with color? And I was lucky they said yes.
I'm very excited about my new podcast sponsor because Montana has brought colors and high-quality furniture into private homes, offices, universities, boardrooms, restaurants, lobbies, and concert halls since 1982. So as you can hear, they are color nerds just like me. But just launching our collaboration in English wasn't enough for us. We wanted to create a more playful space. So Montana and I decided that our very first podcast together should be recorded live during 3 days of design right here in Copenhagen. And of course, we also had to have a very big audience, so I could get a little bit nervous.
I'm really happy to be here today with the first live recording of The Sound of Color, my podcast. Because my mission with the podcast is for you to discover the importance of color. I want to talk today about colors in the world that we live in, because there's both colors in the natural world and in the design world. And I believe that we will discover how much color affects us and how many decisions we make based on color and how our mood and mental well-being is influenced by color if we take a closer look at color and if we don't take color for granted. But I want to start by saying one thing. My shoes are 1.1 billion years old. And I'm sure you're going to look at them and they're going to be like, that's Crocs, Sarah. They're not 1.1 billion years old. But what I want to say is that the oldest color pigment found on Earth is actually 1.1 billion years old. And that color is pink, just like my shoes. And the reason I want to tell you that, well, it's not, obviously I love the color pink, but I want you to think about this mind-boggling fact about color, that, color has been around since before the dinosaurs. And when we look at objects, if we have more knowledge about color, if we understand color better, maybe we will actually look at color in a new and in a different way. And maybe you will think differently about my Crocs, now when you know that pink is 1.1 billion years.
Fortunately, it wasn't just me and my Crocs who were going to be on stage. I also had two amazing guests with me. The first guest was artist and writer David Batchelor. For over 25 years, David has been exploring color as it is experienced in the contemporary urban environment. His work includes sculpture, installation, painting, photography, drawing and writing.
I think the fact that his work is centered around colors in the city, the urban environment, so man-made colors, is an interesting aspect. And especially his pieces of work where he sticks stuff in concrete, which is utilizing found objects like clothes pegs and fly swatters, toys and empty bottles and containers. They're really interesting because they make you look at the colors around you in a new way. You put them on a pedestal and make us rethink the value of the colors in these objects. Yeah, shortly said, you make us look at color in a new way. And the other guest I have with me today is Margrethe Odgaard. She's a color and textile designer, and you have designed colors for over 20 years almost now for a range of international brands like Kvadrat, Muto, Hey, Acacia, and of course also Montana. You have designed the entire new color range here at Montana. A lot of colors, more than 30. And alongside Margrethe's commercial collaborations, she also runs an artistic practice, which is rooted in self-initiated work. And you've shown this work in really nice museums like Røska Museum and Helsinki's Design Museum, and also in Willumsen Museum here in Denmark. Yeah, I'm very pleased to have you two as my guests. Today, we're going to talk a bit about what is it that colors can do, why color is important. We're going to do a little musical experiment as well, I'll get into later. And also we'll end up talking a bit about how to get architects, artists, designers to embrace colors more. So, I think we should get going, and then let's hope it's not going to rain on us. Margrethe, I want to start by asking you, what is it do you think that color can do?
Well, first of all, I think we just have to put the perception for man in the center of that question, because what can color do? When we look at color, what we actually see when we look at color from natural light sources, David. Color reaching the surface, filtered through the air. As we know, light contains all colors, and the moment the light meets the surface, it's either reflected or absorbed, and by that the color sensation appears because of the light waves. What kind of light waves meet our eyes? So that's sort of the complicated question to have in the back of our mind. Why color affects us? Why colors are important? Because colors are the result of light's manifestation in the surface. I actually tend to think of color as the love child between light and material, because it's like the miracle happening in the surface, and we don't react neutral to miracles or to light. Light is energy. We live from energy. And that's sort of the colored energy that reaches. And that's why they have such a huge impact on our senses and even our emotions. And that's sort of the question that I'm concerned about in my work, trying to I actually think of myself as the designer of the air right above the surface.
Okay.
Instead of the surface itself, because it's like what happens there and how do we meet it, our senses and our emotions.
It is very fascinating to hear Margrethe Odgaard's extremely passionate approach to colors. But getting around to comprehend how and why color affects us can be hard to describe in words. And exactly that is something that David Batchelor also touches upon.
Colour is one of the great pleasures of colour, and I think one of the things that has made a lot of philosophers very interested in it, is that it exposes the limits of language. We're so dependent on language for many huge amount of things, and we can't do without it. But it's a mistake to imagine that there aren't areas of experience which fundamentally stand outside language, and colour is a great reminder of one of those areas that we simply can't put into words. Okay, well here's the example I always use, that the average human eye can detect about 10 million different gradations of colour, which is better than some animals, better than dogs, but not as good as prawns. Okay. So we're somewhere between dogs and prawns.
Great place to be.
So we can experience this vast array of colours, but most languages only have up to 11 basic colour terms, which are the colour terms that you'd expect all adults to be familiar with. So there's an enormous asymmetry between literally what we can see and what we can say. Now obviously we have more specialised colour language that we will probably use, But even so, when someone says, well, blue is a calming color, well, you think, well, which blue? We can literally see a million different blues. So I think those tendencies to use color names rather than colors themselves is always incredibly reductive, and to the point of being utterly useless when you're doing anything other than something very shorthand. Do color names help you very much?
It's actually the worst part of the job, designing colors, because I know that it will color the mental approach to the color. So you'll be influenced.
Yeah.
Like, what color is elephant breath? That's the color of a Farron ball, and I almost like, how did they come up with that name? But it's interesting now. It's like when you look at the color, and I'm coloring my wall elephant breath. It's like it's actually imposing a vision in my mind. Like, okay, elephant breath, why not?
Weirdly, when I think of elephant breath, I think of a smell.
Exactly,
and it's not a good one.
But but maybe the explanation comes from your what you're saying, that we don't have enough words for the sensation of colors.
But I think also that's, for me, a quite interesting thing when I've been doing the podcast and in Danish, the way to talk about color. And for me also that colors are so many more emotions. And, it kind of is a material. I don't know if I can call color a material, because as you said, it exists above the surface of the material. And that's just a thing that's, my brain is still not getting around to understanding that, actually. But for me, to have this whole idea that color is this kind of unmaterialistic material kind of resonates with the idea that it makes you feel in many other ways. It affects your body, and I want to kind of jump into this idea that I got, which was to make kind of a musical experiment, which is called The Sound of a Color, which is something I do in each of the episodes of the podcast, because I want music can also touch us in many other senses. It can make us happy and sad and melancholic. So I actually asked you guys to pick a color. It's almost like picking your favorite color. No, but pick a color that you would like to hear the sound of. And David, I wrote to you. And what did you say? Which color was it that you wanted to?
I almost always get asked at talks by some smart person when the Q&A comes up. Said,
that's me.
And the question is,
smart person.
I've been talking for an hour and a half about my work, and the question is, what's your favourite colour? And that's fine, because I've developed a very long answer to this, just as a kind of
I'm looking forward to it.
I'm curious.
Revenge. But the short answer I give is Pantone 292.
And if you don't know the Pantone chart, I have it right here, Pantone.
But I don't mean it. I don't mean it. And the reason I say Pantone 292 is because there's a song by the band Magnetic Fields. There's a great album called 69 Love Songs, which some of you will know. And there's a song called Reno Dakota, and it's a love song to Reno Dakota. And it says, Reno Dakota, there's not an iota of love left in you. I've forgotten the next line, but it goes...
It makes you blue.
You make me feel blue, Pantone 292. So... That's my only reason for doing it.
Yeah, which is, I think, when I talking about like what colors, you said elephant breath, what does color make you feel? Like you kind of, if I look at the color, Pantone 292, for me it's a quite happy color, but actually in the song, it's almost like my jacket today. In the song, he's not a very nice person to be in love with, I would say, if I listen to the lyrics.
There's a lovely book by the philosopher William Gass called On Being Blue, and it's a whole it's a long essay about blue as a color, but also as a mood and as a form of pornography. And this was written in there. He was a student.
How a sort of pornography?
Well, blue movies.
Okay. Explain that also to the audience and to the listeners who might not understand. Just shortly.
This is a rabbit hole we don't probably need to go down.
Okay, let's go down.
But they used to be called blue movies. I don't know why. In English, obviously. Okay. Kind of moving on.
Yeah. Okay, I'll totally move on then. Margrethe, I also asked you which color you wanted to hear the sound of, and which color did you choose?
Well, I actually ended up choosing this yellow, Acacia yellow, which is a yellow I developed for Montana. So it's one of their surface colors. And it was because of yellow is actually one of the difficult colors to create because it's very easily becomes naive and it looks dirty. So it's like a complex color. And I was curious to hear what the musician would sort of how he might catch the complexity of yellow. There's so many things I could say about yellow, but I'm not going to do so. But in this case of Acacia, what I really tried to create was a blissful, warm, shining, not over shiny, and also like sun-kissed color. So
yeah, because I wanted to. Now you said you're not going to talk too much about it, but now everybody here can see this lovely yellow, but the listeners can't. If you could describe how the color, like how does it taste? To try and put other words on it.
Yes, Acacia, the name honey, but it's sweet with a little zest of lime or orange to it. So it's actually. In my search for this color, it was to find the right balance between warm and cold, sweet and sour, and shiny and like in an aggressive, like glowing way, and then in a subtle, like goldish way. So it was like I was actually in a constant search of finding the middle balance of all of the energies of yellow. I'm sure the listeners got that color.
Totally. And if not, luckily now the musician has already been cooking a bit. Like I just said in the live recording, I had already gotten the musician Morten Køie to start on this experiment. I asked him to create a piece of music based on the two colors that Margrethe and David chose. Morten Køie founded the Danish band Turbo Weekend, and they have played at several festivals across Europe. And they received a multitude of awards, like the Danish Music Awards. But in 2018, Turbo Weekend went their separate ways, and now Morten Køie is playing with his new band Solskin. But let's hear what Morten said to this experiment. Hi, Morten.
Hi.
Thank you so much for saying yes to take part in this musical experiment that I named The Sound of a Color. This is an experiment that is part of every episode in this podcast. And this time is a bit special as it's both the very first live recording of the podcast and it is with two guests.
Mm-hmm.
And the colors that they sent me is... Margrethe sent me Acacia from her latest color collection from Montana. And I would describe it as this beautiful, warm, egg yolky, sunny yellow.
Yes, I agree.
Yeah, I have a picture here on my screen that we're looking at.
Mm-hmm.
And then David, he chose Pantone 292. This color is the most picturesque, cartoon-like summer sky blue.
Exactly.
Disney summer holiday.
Mm-hmm.
And David chose this color because it's quoted in the song Reno Dakota by the Magnetic Fields. Do you know the song?
Yes, Pantone.
Yeah, it's like, you're making me blue. It's making me blue. Pantone 292. I'm very bad at singing.
Yeah, that sounds close enough. Yes.
Listen to it. Okay, but here we're just looking at the two colors. You can see them here.
Mm-hmm.
How would you make a musical interpretation of
well, I think I'm getting the summer vibe.
Mm-hmm.
There's this warm yellow, the clear blue sky.
If you want to translate that sound into music.
I'm playing in this band that's called in Danish Solskin, which is sunshine in English.
Very apt. This was not planned in advance, I want to say.
No,
I asked you before I got the colors.
Yes. Yeah. And the funny thing is, this band is all about music from where the sun shines a lot. It's a very positive, instrumental, experimental project.
And when you say music from where the sun shines a lot, we're in Denmark.
Yeah.
The sun shines like 2 months a year.
Yeah, so we're very inspired by, let's say, sounds from Africa, sounds from Brazil. I have this very nice kalimba, this big one, the one you put your thumbs on. Dum, 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 dum.
Oh yeah, I think I know the ones. It's like kind of like a mini keyboard, but where the
Yeah, but it's metal, like bended metal.
Yeah,
that's
the
on the
keys are
thing.
like
Ding, ding, ding. Yeah.
Yeah.
So you tap it with your thumbs or your fingers.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. We'll start there and then go from, let's see where it leads us.
Hmm?
I mean, music is also very intuitive.
True.
So,
Which I think people should embrace colors like that as well.
yeah.
Well, that all sounds very exciting.
Yeah.
So I'll be looking forward to coming back and hearing your version of Acacia Yellow and Pantone 292 Blue.
Yeah.
So see you soon again.
I'll see you soon, Sam.
Back at the live event in Copenhagen, the sky is getting more and more grey as we talk about what colors can do and what they mean to David and Margrethe.
To me, color is also a universal language. It's like a language in itself compared with music. It's like you actually, I don't know to the audience and to you, it's everyone here, but or the listeners, but do you have an expectation of music being described? I don't. I listen to music and I allow myself to just feel or dream or imagine or like or dislike. Everything is allowed, but it's my experience that matters. And I don't care to read too many clever texts about music. It's just something that's for me. And I think that's the same way I like to think of color. It's an experience you don't have to necessarily name in words, and it describes as something you can compare. And that said, I think it's also the frame always talking about color experiences as something individual. We each have different experiences.
You mean subjectivity?
Subjectivity, yes, exactly. So something that's just your own experience. I think as we listen to music, we can be in an entire audience of music and feel lifted and feel like being, we're moved. We don't know how, but we are all moved by the sound, as well as I think we can all be moved in sort of the same way about a certain color.
Yeah.
So that's another thing that occupies my work is how can we talk about color as something in general instead of as something personal? Because we sort of had a tendency to talk as color, maybe also to make it less relevant, because we do lose control working with color. But maybe it's also that loss of control that we can share.
So what Margrethe Odgaard is saying is that working with colors can be a loss of control for a designer. And in fact, David Batchelor's very early works contained no colors at all. But almost by chance, he painted one of his sculptures pink on one side. And now all his work contains many colors. So I want to know how he chooses the colors in his work.
Well, practically, one thing is that every material has a palette. Acrylics. There's probably 20 colors. Standard colors produced by ICI or other companies in spray paints or in acrylic paints, or you've always got a range of colors that you can use, and I tend to get as many as I can of all of them in the studio, so I don't have to. So I can try them out. Literally, just try them out. The colors of light are very different from the colors of paint, and the colors of paint are very different from other stuff. That wasn't very good. But I just want to pick up on something you were saying, which is, I think color is universal. Color is universal because it's pretty much, with a very rare exception of people who don't see color, every human being is born into color. So in that sense, it's universal. But although it's also culturally very specific. We tend to claim colors to having certain meanings, and they're fairly contingent. And I think one of the great things about that is that and certainly when I've discussed color, everyone's got something to say about it, and everyone's got a stake in it. And and artists, well, obviously, but also designers, architects, anthropologists, evolutionary biologists, neuroscientists. Everyone's got a story about color, and it just makes it an incredibly enjoyable subject to work with because it's so inclusive.
I totally agree, but then I'm also, I don't understand why are we so, now I'm saying we, but afraid of using color.
Well, first of all, I'd say that I always preface that by saying it's a Western condition. And first of all, I haven't done the research beyond that, but it's it's very much a Western tradition. This skepticism about colour, and I think as I said, because it's an embarrassment to language, which we're so dependent on. It seems too connected to the body, to the senses, and to sensuality, which is also a sort of Western anxiety. I think between those things, and that's enough to put people off, it seems.
Mm-hmm. But I thought also it was interesting when you made that connection between saying we can see, 10 million gradations of color, but you said as well like that there's 11 words in our language, or
basic
color terms. But like, I want to also ask you, Margrethe, you said that that's your least favorite part, but this whole idea of like naming, this is especially in design, when people want a color, a piece of Montana in a color, you have to name these colors that you design. Can you what is your thoughts on that? Like, in this whole idea of it being something that we should sense?
When I give a name to a color, I also sort of put the mind in a certain direction. I add an image. I actually code the color with associations. Mm-hmm. And so I'm trying to be the user, and I'm trying to stand in front of the color, and I'm trying to focus on, so what kind of associations do I want to add to the glow of the color itself? So in that sense, I'm trying to use it to the perspective, the color perspective mentally. Mm-hmm. And in case of Montana, I have an interesting example, because there's a color called oat.
Yeah.
And it's more like a powder color. It's sort of a very soft beige with a reddish tone. So it has this reddish tone, but if I had named it maybe more correctly, some kind of powder, you would have seen the pink immediately. But it's a color with equal part of yellow and pink, and by naming it oat, I enhanced the experience of yellow, because your mind would look for the oat color in the paint itself. Does it make sense what I'm saying?
Yeah, but also I think it's quite interesting, this whole idea of like describing colors, which is something extremely visual with words, and also like now doing a podcast where people can't see any of the colors that we're talking about. But for me as well, like sometimes when you use words, you get other associations. I remember I lived in England for many years, and my friend always said to me, "Oh, Danish people, they eat muesli for breakfast every day." Kind of in a saying we were a bit plain, or like, and for me, when I hear the word oats, it's totally like what I did every morning before school.
It's a humble name.
It's a humble name, exactly. Yeah. Muesli or like oats for breakfast is a humble breakfast. So the color, for me as well, the color becomes a bit humble. When you have those associations, to create other associations in people's mind.
And for all of the Montana's colors, I chose things that you could put in your mouth. So that was a deliberate choice to actually, I've had sort of been working a lot with color relating to the senses, and in this case, I still have the idea that colors that you feel like tasting, like you're actually not reluctant to put in your mouth, they have a higher sensory approach. Mm. So it's sort of been my thesis from creating the colors.
But that's also one of the examples of how we struggle with language and color, that we have to find metaphors for colors. You talked about sweet colors and sour colors, and we can claw at other sensory experiences in order to try to find the words for color. Of course, colors aren't literally hot or cold, but we know what each other mean when we talk about a hot color or a cold color or a sweet color. And it's in that sense we're all, and the sound of color is it's about synesthesia, about the
and can we just
parent relation.
You want to just shortly describe what synesthesia is?
Synesthesia is the cross-referencing of different sensory modes. So to talk about color in terms of taste is a synesthetic response, and it's an actual condition that some people have, which is that when they hear a word...
Do you have it?
Oh, you're synesthetic?
Yes.
Okay, everyone wishes they were. But I think we're all amateur synesthetes in that we talk about sweet and sour and hot and cold colours. And Wittgenstein asked this great question. He said, why can't I imagine a grey hot? And you can't. Why not?
Yes, why can't we imagine a hot grey? I love that David keeps questioning our perception of colour. In fact, he has written a book called Chromophobia, The Fear of Colour. I want to know why he felt it was necessary to write that book.
I mean, the book came out of my experience in the studio as a young-ish artist at the time. So it wasn't an academic or a theoretical response. It was an observation that there was very little colour in the contemporary art scene that I was a part of. And it simply became a question of, what motivates this resistance to colour in the West? And I don't think I ever properly answered that question. I'm not sure I've answered it yet. But again, it's really exploring this sense of the fear of colour that seems present in Western writing literally for 2,500 years. Now, it's not... The final chapter is called Chromophilia, which, of course, there's the opposite, which is the artists, the philosophers, the writers, for whom colour is a brilliant and a vivid experience rather than a marginal or a superficial one. My work is to rattle the cage a bit, probably. That's about it.
We want to say something.
I'm just... I should tell you that I read your book in 2002, I think.
Oh.
And it was a book I missed in my education. It was like the first time I read or heard someone actually putting words on what I've been struggling with. So the book has meant a lot to me. And I can see now, I reread it before meeting you today, and I can see, yes, I have a lot from that book in my, I am embedded in my own work. So, but I do have, I have the question for you. Can you just say, maybe in the elevator one-liner, what's wrong with color?
I can only repeat what I've said, which is, I think, principally, it is an embarrassment to language.
And a lack of control.
Yes, we cannot contain it. And it's, even the beautiful colour circles and colour spheres that you got a lot in the 18th and 19th century of artists, exploring the spectrum and how it all fitted together. They always put colour in a circle or in a geometric shape.
In an order.
In an order. Mm. And there's always a bit of colour that escapes that order. And you can never contain it in that sense. So it's that sense of it always slipping through your fingers.
And it's also the amount of opportunities, the waste field of color nuances. So there's, I think, in the back of your mind, you have this knowledge that as a designer, an artist, an architect, there's a high possibility that you will not succeed with your vision in choosing the color. And that's that's what makes us afraid of using color. I have this beautiful vision in my head, but how can I manifest it in my specific project? So it has like a built-in anxiety is the wrong English word. I think it's too strong, but it's like it makes you insecure. Because it's like, is there a code I should use? Is that an experience I don't have? Is there something I should know? So the feeling that you can never master color.
Well, I think you can never master color. You can never know color.
And that's the interesting thing, because then you have to embrace the fact that you can never master color.
And it's a fabulous reminder of how little we know about the world.
But I also want to say, do you think that is the whole, I want to kind of finish on, how do we get architects, artists, designers to not be afraid?
But that's it, to allow ourselves to make mistakes and to admit to ourselves, I'm not a master of colors, but less can do.
Yeah, you can't control colors.
No, because we want to be, everyone wants to be a success.
Yeah.
And we want all of our projects to become a success, right, David?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I'm sorry, yeah.
Right, David?
Sorry, I was drifting. I was thinking the problem, I don't have the problem that architects have, is that I don't do things that are static and permanent.
No.
I can always move my colours around.
Yeah.
And colour is mobile.
Or repaint it.
Or redo it. And buildings are big things. So I just don't get too technical about it. And the bigger the buildings are, I think the harder it is to fix a colour for them, because I think colour is intrinsically mobile and fragile.
And depending on light, which is also a very interesting factor in architecture.
Maybe that's the answer, that, being afraid of colors. And also when you kind of put, especially within design and architecture, it's like, I'm going to now produce this chair, or I'm going to paint this room, I'm going to do this facade in this color, that it becomes so permanent that is it because we are afraid of making a final decision, something that seems changeable?
I think, I guess, when I do if I do a sculpture or painting using a particular color, it's always in a way fairly provisional, because the next day I'll do another color. So I'm really...
You're free.
Well, I don't have to worry in a way that an architect or perhaps a designer does.
Margrethe, now you have worked much more in the design world. What is, your guidance to becoming more free in the use of color?
I make a huge effort to be clear about the intention. Because
what do you mean by that?
Yeah. So when I'm asked to color set something, it's not a question of what color I would like it to be. It's more like a question about, so what is this object? What is it for? What's the function of the color? How can the color make that function more obvious or better working or more intuitive? So what actually... to some degree, to ask myself, what's the function of the color that I'm adding, and that doesn't end up in a specific color choice. It more leads me towards the direction.
Oh no, rain!
What?
This is going to be very wet. We're going to break it a little.
It actually is raining.
It is actually.
Oh yes, the Danish summer once again showed its unstable side. But fortunately, we got through almost the entire program before the rain came. And in this short rainy break, we can get the opportunity to hear how Morten went about making a piece of music out of the two colors that Margrethe and David chose. Hi, Morten. I'm back.
Hi again. Nice to see you.
So you have been working on interpreting the colors Acacia yellow and Pantone 292 blue for this musical experiment. And I'm excited to hear what musical take you have come up with.
Yeah.
Do you want to tell us about your process?
Yes, I met up with Martin. We had a long talk about the colors, what we felt and what we thought about, and and then we instantaneously just went on with avoided our normal instruments, like the string instruments we play. He's a guitarist, and I play the bass a lot. So we ended up starting with xylophone, kalimba, and percussion, and made this thing with that. And then we, to create this warm, infinite sky, all these things we talked about. And we also talked about, there's something playful and childish about this. We just got this childish vibe from the colors as well, childhood memories or whatever, like the sun and the beach, the sky, so we wanted to play with the instruments. So playing stuff we're not especially good at, to be honest.
Great.
But then you get into it, and then you do something simple because it's childish. It doesn't have to be super complicated. I think we ended up with something really nice.
No, I think I want to just go a little bit deeper into this thing of the process of creating something audible from something visual. Do you have any kind of words or thoughts on that, to create something audible from something visual? So to create music from a color?
I mean, the music creates, instantaneously creates a mood, right? Mm-hmm. Maybe even more than I would say. Of course, the color does it as well, but somehow the music is so physical somehow.
Yeah.
So, if we did something different than we did here, we could have made the colors seem different. When we do film, for instance, if you have this dance scene, you have this couple, and you put something really dancey, happy about, you seem like they were having a good time, right? They're dancing. But if you put something that's really dark and mysterious, something's going on, right? So you change the music has a huge impact on how, and this way it's a bit, the mood, right? What you sense in the picture. I guess it's somehow the same with the color, but this way we did it the other way around, right? So we got a vibe from the colors and we tried to do the music.
We were lucky that the sun came out again. And I was able to thank both Margrethe Odgaard and David Batchelor for joining me. And together with the audience, we got to hear the music that Morten Køie created.
I want to say thank you for taking your time to be here today. And I want to say thank you to Montana for making the space for it. I just want to say that this has been a very enlightening talk about color. And I hope that you'll leave today and look at color in a new perspective. And then as a final thing, I want you all to just close your eyes for one short minute and then listen to the sound of Acacia Yellow and Pantone 292 Blue.
Thank you very much for listening. To see images from the recording session or the work of the guests in this episode, please head over to the podcast website via the link in the show notes. Remember to follow the show to hear about upcoming episodes. And if you liked what you heard, please leave us a quick review if you have time. And of course, share it with anyone else who might enjoy it.